I had to leave my completely paralyzed toddler on an airplane, who I think any parent would say, I'm not leaving this aircraft and leaving my child here. And then they expected me to leave him by himself and leave the airplane and go back and take care of his wheelchair.
Yeah, you had to disassemble it yourself.
I did.
For them, yeah, for liability reasons, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And
very nice making a mother do that. That's it's great.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah. And I had to literally beg the flight attendant to stay with my son, who is completely paralyzed and would be falling out of his seat otherwise. It was really just undignifying and emotional, as you can imagine.
Thank you for taking a seat with the chairman. Welcome to Chairman of the Board.
I bet the board is spelled B-O-R-E-D.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? My name is Michael, the chairman, and welcome back to the Chairman of the Board podcast. My guest today is Michele Erwin. Thank you for joining me, Michele. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael, for having me.
Definitely. So Michele is the founder and CEO of an organization, a nonprofit called All Wheels Up, which, Michele, can you explain just a little bit about that briefly, just to give people background?
Yeah, absolutely. So All Wheels Up is a nonprofit, and our main focus is to fund research for a wheelchair spot on airplanes. So we don't make anything, we don't manufacture anything, we don't sell anything, and we're really here to really move the idea of a wheelchair spot on airplanes forward.
Which is, I think, I just got to say right off the bat, I respect you so much for doing this, and we'll get into the story of why you founded this. I watched your TED Talk, which was fantastic, by the way. You did a very good job. And I liked your outfit, by the way, too. I know you're in the fashion industry. It was very good.
Thank you.
So now that everyone kind of knows a little bit of background on this, I just want to say a couple facts and studies that your organization did, which is, I think, very impactful for people to know. Also, if this is your first time watching my podcast, you'll know this is very near and dear to me as well, because I'm a disabled person, as you might guess, by Michael the Chairman. So in a survey conducted by All Wheels Up, you found that 80% of the 4 million wheelchair users in the U.S. do not fly because airplanes are not handicapped accessible, as well as the risk of injury to themselves and their wheelchairs. The Department of Transportation are breaking about 25 wheelchairs a day. And I wanted to ask you, what should someone do if their wheelchair, if someone who's listening is disabled, what should someone do if their wheelchair has been damaged by an airline?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing you should do is definitely go to the complaints department and, let them know that the wheelchair has been damaged. I hear all the time, well, I don't want to be a statistic, but you really do want to document that your wheelchair has been damaged. One, it's now the law for all of the airlines to submit to the DOT the number of wheelchairs that they are damaging, and as we're seeing that number rise, and so change, because these numbers are increasing, there is more request for change to be made. And then also, if you don't tell the airlines the day that your wheelchair is damaged right at the airport, it's not their responsibility to help repair your wheelchair financially.
Which is just insane. Exactly. So thank God that they now have to report these statistics. And we'll get into some other questions I have about it as well soon.
Michael, if I could also say, if you're injured while you're on a flight, make sure that you call the paramedics and the EMTs at the airport, because again, once you leave that airport, the airlines are not responsible to fund your health care.
And they put all that pressure on the handicapped person, and it starts a scene, and we'll get into flying with dignity in a little bit as well, because you've spoken on that, which is very important. And these organizations just really don't treat handicapped people with a lot of respect. And I'm sure it's hard on workers to take care of someone when they're not prepped, right, who's handicapped and everything, and it's just all screwed up. So yeah, can you explain why you founded All Wheels Up? and the story behind it.
So I have a child, and he uses a wheelchair, and he is 16 now. I started All Wheels Up 13 years ago. So I was actually working on a timeline. I didn't even realize it's been already 13 years. I keep saying, oh, it's 9 years. Oh, it's 10 years. Nope, it's 13 years, and we're heading into almost 14 years. So it's been a pretty long road. But I was traveling with my son. He was very little at the time, but did have a wheelchair. And I learned very quickly how difficult it was to travel with someone who uses a wheelchair. And like I said, he was a toddler, and his wheelchair was very little, and he was cute. But we just had a terrible experience. And it was a very embarrassing experience. I was the last one to get back onto the plane, and after trying to, manage my son's wheelchair, and a lot of, back and forth with the flight attendants, and I was back on the plane, and I was just mortified. I'm hot, I'm sweaty from the whole situation, and all I could think all the way home was, I don't understand why there isn't a wheelchair spot on airplanes. Like, I have one for my son in my minivan, and we travel safely all over the country that way. And I just didn't understand why the most technologically advanced machinery almost in the world, maybe other than maybe a spaceship, isn't wheelchair accessible. And so I really just started doing research to see if there was another organization working on accessible air travel. I really wasn't looking to start a company or a nonprofit or a movement. And I learned very quickly that there was no organization actively working on the idea of a wheelchair spot on airplanes. And it just came of that, as really just this white space that nobody was actively working on it. I can't say that I was the first person to think of a wheelchair spot. I mean, I'm sure there's many wheelchair users who have thought about it, said it, promoted it, but I think 13 years in, I think I can officially say we're the first organization to fund the crash testing and really make the movement happen.
Right. And so can you explain also the current process of what everyday people have to do for power chairs and regular chairs as well? Like, you have to break it down yourself if you're a parent for your child, and right, so you had to do that, I'm sure, that day.
Correct. Yeah, I had to leave my completely paralyzed toddler on an airplane, who I think any parent would say, I'm not leaving this aircraft and leaving my child here. And then they expected me to leave him by himself and leave the airplane and go back and take care of his wheelchair.
Yeah, you have to disassemble it yourself.
I did.
For them, yeah, for liability reasons, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And
very nice making a mother do that. It's great.
Yes.
It's great.
Yeah. And I had to literally beg the flight attendant to stay with my son, who is completely paralyzed and would be falling out of his seat otherwise. It was really just undignifying and emotional, as you can imagine.
Yeah, terrible, just terrible. So then also after the flight, right, did they completely lose the wheelchair, or was it damaged that one time?
Other than that, bad experience, the wheelchair, probably with the exceptions of scuffs and stuff like that, it was fine.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of board members and committee members here at All Wheels Up who have had their wheelchair. I think in some cases, one of our committee members has had their wheelchair this year broken 4 times because he does travel so much. So it is a big issue. But for me, it was just more of the fact that there wasn't a spot and I needed to leave the airplane.
Okay. And yeah, so when you show up to the other airport right after your flight and your wheelchair is either destroyed or lost, you're showing up essentially without your legs. I mean, you're pretty much screwed. And then sometimes it can take up to 6 months or even longer to get a replacement, because the airlines, I know you have to work with them, so I'm not going to be too harsh here, but it's not their number one priority to solve this issue for you. And then, but that's your livelihood, that's your main life. And if you have to go to a job or, not even have to, you should be able to do whatever. It's so ridiculous.
I would say, we do work with the airlines and we work with the, plane manufacturers. And I would have to tell you, every single individual that we work with wants to see change. There isn't, one person in the industry that's saying that they don't want this because they're cold-hearted, right? It's the industry is actively working with All Wheels Up and other advocacy groups to make sure that we can make change. But what we also need to recognize is that change of this magnitude is slow, and it's a process. And what All Wheels Up has been able to do is to take a very difficult conversation where every time you brought something like this up, the door was shut on our faces, to now that we have conferences and working groups and everybody's there to really have those really robust conversations and really have truthful conversations about how can we move this idea forward. And it was because what we did was everybody first said it's not safe. And so what we did is, as a proof of concept, we funded the crash tests. And then their second question was, it's not affordable. So we funded a budget impact study. And so for every question that they have, we help fund. And we don't take it as they don't want to help us. It's just, that's what we do also, say, for a cure-based nonprofit. So, we help those pharmaceutical companies, right, and nonprofits, plant those, do the seed funding or the seed research. And that's who we are in the concept. The airlines and the industry in total have questions, and we're helping answer those questions.
Mm-hmm. And I know your philosophy is to lead with the solution and not with the problem, because that's their language, right? Is
Correct.
You need to have, it has to be profitable. And that's the thing that I always have a problem with certain companies, not just airlines, anything, is that it has to be profitable to do the right thing. And I just don't think that's right.
Well, I wouldn't say that it has to be profitable, but we also have to show that you have to show the finance, you have to show the economic background to it. In the very least, we can't be making these decisions blindly. We have to show that it's safe, and we do have to show the cost impact, whether it is a savings, whether it is, a cost neutral, or what we don't think we're going to see is, a cost detriment. But they do, in the very least, need to see that information.
Mm-hmm.
And our philosophy more is, we don't blame and shame, and we also want to make sure that we have responsible messaging. And what we mean by that is, it's not our organization's responsibility or to put a timeline on this project, because it is so grossly underfunded. And I think the only organization that should and can be putting a timeline to a project like this is the FAA.
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, I also want to thank you for just taking the initiative to do this after finding out that there was nothing. I think that's the story of really all great people in the world, is once they realize, hey, nothing is happening here for this, out of responsibility, I know it's going to be a hard journey, but I know I need to do this. And that's very commendable. And I know you're doing it for your son, as well as all the millions of people this will affect across the world, which is just, thank you for that. Because even for myself, just, it's going to help me out too, because I'm a comedian, and I for the most part, I'm still trapped at home a lot, and because I can't drive, and so I don't know if you know this, I'm 25. I know a lot of people always tend to think I'm a little older and stuff. So I'm still trying to figure out how to live independently and what I'm going to do myself. And currently, so I'm in Oregon, and currently the comedy capital of the world for stand-up is Austin, Texas, which is near you, right? So
yeah,
I really want to get out there, but I'm, I don't want to say afraid, but I don't want to get screwed. If I get there, my power chair is broken, and then I'm like, well, what do I do now? And then for the next, so many months, like anyone else who's handicapped, what are you going to do? It's pay for a rental, and handicapped people always get price gouged on all these things when they're backed into a corner. Usually, unless you have a lot of family support with money, a lot of handicapped people don't have the finances to afford all the health care and everything, and you're kind of stuck on a poverty cycle if you have any government assistance, and that's a whole nother conversation I'm sure you're aware of as well. So
Yeah. No, but I hear
um,
what you're saying, Michael. When I was sitting on that plane 13 years ago thinking why isn't this, wheelchair accessible? I was thinking, well, how is my son going to go off to college and, fly to that university? How is he going to, fly and travel for his career? And then it really dawned on me then. I'm like, well, how are people doing it today? Like I help my son, but what's going to happen when, he grows up? So I definitely, while yes, I obviously, started this because I have a son and he really shed light on the need, it definitely was thinking about, everybody else. And I do have a family member who is a paraplegic also, and he tells me all the time why he doesn't fly, and he's afraid, so he drives to all of his, conferences because of the risk of air travel. So it's definitely wanting to do this so people like you can have, be independent. And there's so many things that you can say, okay, we can walk you through how to pack up your wheelchair so it's safer. But it's just one of those things, why should you have to, pack your wheelchair up like it's, China, just to take a 3-hour flight.
Exactly. And can you also explain, because I'm sure like people who aren't handicapped will also watch this, the Q strain system that are used in, like I have one in my van that I use, and most handicapped people with a power chair do, and how you're using that on the plane, and that, because you explained earlier, that's what you're crash testing in order for the chairs to be on the actual plane.
Yes. So that's what the wheelchair securement systems that I have in my minivan, and even we've crash tested some that are in buses. That's what we crash tested to FAA seat standards and proved that they surpassed airplane seat crash test standards. And so that was really the proof of concept that we were able to take to Congress and say, can we have like a larger feasibility study done? And that was in the 2018 FAA Reauthorization Act. And that study was completed in 2021, where they did agree with us that a wheelchair spot was technically feasible. And, a lot of organizations based on that are moving forward with creating prototypes and concepts.
That's awesome. And the way the Q strain actually works is, for people to know, it just has like a little, on the bottom of every power chair, there's a little bolt. And when you slide into this system, it's like it's hard to explain, but there's a little area that isn't filled in.
Yeah,
and the bolt on the bottom of the chair slides in, and it locks in place.
We crash tested multiple tie down systems, and so one was like what you would see like on the in your minivan with like the hooks, and the same one on the buses with the hooks, and we did do that center bolt lock system. But I think what currently the concepts that are out there are not using that center bolt lock system because it's not as universal as the hook system. So
it's going to be the tie downs.
It probably be the tie down systems or something similar.
Okay. That makes sense. It would be cool if there was an option for both or some, I'm sure that's hard to pass, but yeah, I'm sure, you're focusing on just getting it done. So it's happening. Can you explain how much a power chair usually costs so people understand like how detrimental it is for losing one?
I think a lot of people are always really surprised by this number. I met a young man just a couple of years ago, and he told me his wheelchair was $79,000. And I have actually just learned that number is actually really low now. I think a woman just told me her wheelchair was closer to $100,000. So I think, just everything the costs are going up. So I think anything that was quoted just a couple of years ago doesn't exist anymore. But power chairs, cost just as much as, high-end, cars. And, I don't think any person would say, yeah, let's throw my Tesla in the belly of an airplane and let's see how it fares. So I think we kind of need to keep that in mind.
Exactly. And it's not just like a car where you can, get another one right away or, sort of a rental or something. It's literally a part of you that gets lost or destroyed. It's a part of
Exactly.
you. And then you have to go through insurance and all that stuff. And it's a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
um,
So, unlike a car, your wheelchair is built to support you and it's built around you. And that's, it just getting measured for the wheelchair can take months and then obviously manufacturing it specific to you. So,
exactly. Like my wheelchair is custom. Like I have so many issues, but my spine is very deformed and I have scoliosis and kyphosis. So I have like the hump on my back and I'm leaned over and stuff. So it's molded out to my actual spine. So you got to go through that whole process and get all the measurements done again. And yeah, it's a whole, I've been through all that stuff. It's a whole thing. I want to ask you, how's your family doing now? I know your son still has complications and stuff, but as a whole, are you guys in a better place?
yeah, he's
Doing,
16 and, he has spinal muscular atrophy and he's doing well. He's doing well for someone with spinal muscular atrophy.
yeah,
But, we're great. We're talking about college. So, all the regular family things.
that's really good to hear. Um, what are some ways people can help out the cause and donate to the charity?
Yeah, absolutely. Please follow us on all of our social platforms. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, I believe we're on Instagram. Just check us out in regards to our call to actions. And if a wheelchair spot is, meaningful to you or meaningful to someone in your family or a friend, reach out to your, representative and let them know that you support the 2023 FAA Reauthorization Act with all of the special amendments added for peoples with disabilities. All Wheels Up was invited to submit language to the FAA Reauthorization Act. And, we are a grassroots, all volunteer, no staff nonprofit. And we submitted 4 different agendas, and All Wheels Up had 4 different agendas added into the FAA Reauthorization Act. And so, we asked for a larger economic impact study. We asked for training, but training through the occupational therapy lens for the wheelchair agents. We asked for evacuations to be looked at and improved for people with disabilities, and a center of excellence for accessible air travel, making sure that there's funding and a sustainable funding source. So all types of research can be done for accessible air travel, not just a wheelchair spot, auditory, blind, deaf, anything that is maybe has a gap in regards to accessible air travel. We'd love to see that funded.
That's awesome. And you said you got all 4 passed into
Yes,
what?
we currently have 4 of them, all 4 added into the FAA Reauthorization Act, and it's going through the
That's awesome.
process. And so just, contact your representative and let them know that you support this and you'd like to see these passed.
That's honestly really inspiring to see that all of you guys are volunteers and doing this out of the goodness of your hearts and actually getting things done. That's really awesome to see.
Thank
And
you. All Wheels
it's
Up
good.
does have a tremendous board. I am so honored to work with a lot of great individuals. Alan Shillette, he does use a wheelchair, and he's been really just commendable in regards to what he's been able to do just on our social platforms and, things like that. And we have a great board chair. His name's Steve Cullen. He has 2 daughters who have a disability. And I think and honestly, I couldn't possibly name everybody, but
Mm.
like I said, I'm just really grateful.
For people like me to see that and other people out there who I think want to make a positive change in the world, it's good to know because for me, I know for myself growing up, I knew no matter what, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help other disabled people and, just people in general. But as I get older and get out into the world and discover good people like you and the rest of your organization doing these things, it's just very impactful and inspiring to know there's others leading the way and making progress. and almost making a path for someone like me to come along and help out as well. So I wanted to tell you, I was going to tell you towards the end of the interview, but if there's anything I can do in the future or moving forward, just let me know and I'll be available. Definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. And, we have National Accessible Air Travel Day coming up. It's on August 20th. So on August 19th, the country celebrates National Aviation Day, where we celebrate all of the wonderful accomplishments done in aviation. And we asked National Calendar to also recognize that, while we applaud all the wonderful, great things, we also need to recognize more work needs to be done. And so we were awarded that National Calendar Day, which we're really excited about. And this year we are hosting our second run for that event this year. So if you know anybody who wants to walk, run, roll in honor of accessible air travel, you can do that in the entire month of August. And you can check out, I believe, our website, and we'll probably have a link there for you to register.
Awesome. So what is your main source of funding now? Is it just people donating to the organization, or is it also, are there any government agencies or companies that are making contributions?
Yeah, currently we still are not funded by any government grants or contracts or anything like that. I would have to say for a very long time, our largest supporters have been the wheelchair community itself. And if it wasn't for the support of the wheelchair community, we wouldn't be here today. We're able to conduct the very first crash test of wheelchairs, with primarily the support of the wheelchair community. Today we have really wonderful sponsor partners. We have organizations such as Expedia, Boeing, Airbus, all of the, major, I think, players in, travel, have been supporting our initiatives. MDA is actually helping us fund one of our next crash tests. Paralyzed Veterans of America has been a longtime supporter of our work, and Q-Straight, who has the tie-down systems, has been supporting our efforts since the very beginning, all the way back through, I believe it was 2020, in 2012 was our first donation from them. So they've been incredible. And Quantum Wheelchairs has been an excellent partner in, donating wheelchairs for us to throw down shuttles and destroy.
What was that like, organizing the crash tests?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was laughed at. I was hung up on just trying to find a testing facility that actually took my question seriously. Was really difficult. And then I found CalSpan, and that was in I think it was 2025, because it took a long time before we got to the actual crash test. But it took, it gets really humbling when you're constantly hung up on or laughed at, with your questions initially. So it took some time to get there, but finally, Q-Strain always had belief in us, and they never, thought it was a silly question. They knew what their tie downs were capable of. And then, so once we finally found someone who could do the testing, they donated a pallet of tie down systems for us to test. And then, the first test was actually done with a surrogate wheelchair, which they also donated. So I didn't have to convince the wheelchair manufacturers just yet. And then from the surrogate wheelchair and the tie-down systems, we showed that to Congress. And that's really when we got the wheelchair organizations involved, and they were like, okay, yeah, this is possible. And so Quantum Wheelchairs started donating wheelchairs.
What was the actual crash test like? Like how did that actually take place?
Yeah, so it's in Buffalo, New York, and it's cold. Just gonna let everybody know it's cold. But it was, I just went to this, location, and it's this big concrete building, and it's a lot of waiting. I hate to say it, like it's, and I'm sure that's what, they know, but, it's a lot of prep to get the wheelchairs onto the sled and, do all of the things that they have to do for their, testing. So it's a lot of like hurry up and wait. And so, it seemed like hours sometimes just getting the wheelchair like on top of the pallet, on top of the testing sled, and then all of the computer stuff that they need to do.
So it's like a certain amount of force they push down
Correct.
on like a, okay.
I don't know if it's pushing down. I'm not really
Sure.
the technical person to ask. I think some of
Okay.
these questions, I'm more of your project manager. Like I will
Yeah.
fund us and get us there, but on that more technical side, I'm not necessarily your person. But
But you saw them actually test it, like
yeah, and
doing
it
the,
happens in honestly less than a blink of an eye. It's so fast. Like I said, it takes so long to set up, and then it shoots down this long shuttle, and it's a very
okay.
long room, and you can't even see it with a naked eye. And then they show you videos afterwards. Each test they'll show you, in very, very slow motion of what the tests look like.
Mhm. Okay, so it's like it's going down like a hallway almost, and it hits something like a car crash test.
It's
Pretty
exactly like almost like a
Oh,
car
okay.
crash, but I
Okay.
believe it has it's like more like the sled is on moves, and then like a pin pulls back like a battering ram. Think of a battering ram,
Okay.
and this very large pin. Best way I can pull it is think like a pinball. This pulls back, and then it pushes onto the sled, and then the sled moves.
And those tie down systems actually are way safer than a normal seat on an airplane, right? That's what you found?
Correct. So as an airplane seat is crash tested at 16 Gs, and depending on the test, because there's also a 14 G test, and then the wheelchair tie-down systems are actually crash tested and passed at 20 Gs. So different G forces.
Okay. Well, that's great, and thank you for doing all that. What do you think is a realistic timeline to when the actual end goal is met, where handicapped people can just roll on a plane and just be seated? And I also wanted to ask you, I know I don't want to shoot too many questions at you at once, but once the end goal is actually met and there are handicapped seats on a plane, what would the boarding system be like? Would they all be at the head of the plane, like almost first class, or would it be like back, going through the back somehow, or you know what I mean?
So we've been in a lot of different meetings, and currently the thought is that no, it would not be in the back of the airplane. But I think that's really for the engineers to determine if that's a possibility. There currently isn't a way for a wheelchair to get into the back, and also we don't want it to be that currently, like, think of the ADA, and some they have to use, say, like the back alley to get in, right? That's not what we want. We want everybody to go down the jetway just like everybody else and go onto the airplane and have a wheelchair spot. So we are thinking the jetway, and then yes, it would unfortunately would be into that first class space. Again, I'm not here to say how many seats it's going to be. I'm just looking to make at least one spot for a wheelchair.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And so yeah, I was going to ask you if there's going to be like a first class, coach, and different sections, but it sounds like it'll all be determined by the engineers at that kind of end
Correct.
point.
And I think they're trying to figure out how can we get, say, a wheelchair down that aisle into, say, that first row of coach, or general board seating. But I think there's still a lot of things to figure out.
Do you think they'd be modifying current airplanes, or over time would they be building new airplanes with maybe wider aisles even, or
I think both.
things like that?
I think both.
Because that would be great if we can get rid of the aisle chair too. For most people who don't know, if you're handicapped, you have to be strapped down in this system, and they call it the Hannibal Lecter chair, right? Because
they do, yeah.
Yeah, I told my mom that because I heard you say it's called the Hannibal Lecter chair. And my mom's like, they call it that too? And I'm like, yeah, other people call it that. That's what she always called it. What about going to the bathroom on an airplane? Is anybody working on that yet, or no?
Absolutely. So while our organization does not focus on bathrooms, because there's a lot of other great organizations that are really working on bathrooms, I would have to say, like, Paralyzed Veterans of America. Like, if you want to know about bathrooms, they're your organization. They really, I would say, own that space. They're experts in that area. But we support all of that work being done. There's all different sort of negotiated rulemakings and, all different, things that are happening for, the future of accessible bathrooms on planes, and different dates. It's always changing of when that's going to happen. It's important. And, obviously we want that to happen, but I don't think I'm the person to necessarily speak on that.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. There's other organizations working on this kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Because people forget how many people, like, I always try and tell people, it's not just people that are born with disabilities. Like, there are veterans who come home severely disabled. There are people who have accidents all the time. People don't know how close they are to being in a situation like your son or me. People don't think about that. And I don't think they want to think about that, really. I think they're kind of scared of it. And I don't know if you've experienced this or your son has experienced this, but me personally, most people are usually kind of scared to talk to me or be around me because they don't really like to think about that. Because I'll go up and ask people like, hey, why are you scared of me? I'm kind of I don't care anymore. I just go,
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I don't want to think about becoming like you. And so it's important that one of my goals is, I've noticed, unless there's good people like you and these other organizations that are taking the initiative to get real things done, which I respect. And eventually I want to start my own charities for helping people live independently and get funding for that with disabilities. But I also want to really get the message out there and be, I don't know what the right word would be, spokesperson or something. But I found that unless you get causes like this trending on Twitter, nobody really cares.
Yep.
So I really want to get things moving. And if I can, with my comedy, which has been kind of successful and things like that, if I can get more eyes on your organizations and these other ones to raise more funding, that would be great.
Oh, Michael, thank you. That would be wonderful. No, and I appreciate having me on this podcast, especially with just this month. It's obviously Disability Pride Month, and obviously just a really big month for the disability community. So we appreciate it being here.
Of course, and what people don't get as well is that being in a wheelchair, or just having a disability in general, cuts across all races, sexes, gender identities, whatever, cuts across everything. And there's all these other, causes and all these other things that have focus, which are very minute things, very small numbers that compared to everyone with a disability that affects everyone, or could affect everyone at some point, or a family. And it's more important than I think most people understand, for anyone listening.
Absolutely. I think I said it in my TEDx, and I actually think the numbers changed. The number that I used in my TEDx was, the people who are affected by the lack of access in air travel is 1 in 5. And, it's the largest minority group. Any one person can join at any time. And I don't know who said that quote, right? I wish I did. But I have to say that's probably the most powerful quote I have ever heard. And because it's so true, right? Tomorrow, you could wake up and you could have a disability, or I could just get in the car right after this podcast and I could have an accident. Like you said, it transcends any other demographic. And, it is, I know the word is really not liked right now, but it has that cross and intersectionality that, it really touches every aspect. So I agree with what you're saying.
What would be like your goal amount of funding to raise to really get things moving even faster?
Oh, I like to spend, Michael. I like to spend money, Michael. I don't know if you want to be asking me that.
Okay.
We are a very underfunded organization. Like I said, we don't even have staff. So, 100% of all of our funding goes to research or advocacy. So, meaning our trips to Washington D.C. and making sure all of our voices are heard. That accessible air travel is important. So, gosh, I would love to see $1 million. I mean, I think that something like that could really change the trajectory of our little organization. We get asked all the time, we'd love you to take on more, take on, can you take on, this issue for the blind, or can you take on this issue for other evacuation needs, or can you take, and we can't, we're just, we have our 3 pillars, and that's what we need to stick to. And and it's not because the other projects aren't important. They're all important. It's just, we just don't have the funding to cover it all. We have projects that we've been wanting to fund for 10 years. We have a morbidity study we'd love to do. And that just keeps getting backburnered. It's just, okay, something else just always keeps coming up that's maybe a little bit more important. So yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure it is hard to tell people, like, look, I really want to help, but we have to focus on this. We have, we only have so much, and I'm sure they understand.
Yeah.
And
it comes down to bandwidth, then, we also, we, as volunteers, we also don't want to get burnt out, right? We're putting in, all of us are working our 40-hour work weeks, and then we're also putting in 40 hours here. So we'd love to get to a point where, I always say to people, look at how much we've done for the future of accessible air travel. Could you imagine what we could do if we were actually funded?
Yeah.
And, I answer emails like, at night. People don't hear from me during the day. Could you imagine if I was able to, actually do, work a true work day and get this done?
It's really remarkable to know that you're doing both things, and I pray that you get the funding that you need, and I'm going to help out in whatever way I can, hopefully. And I wanted to ask you, like, why is it, or do you know why the FAA was not following the ADA when it was passed in the 90s? Like, why didn't they? They're like the one, like, big organization that didn't have to do anything.
So I think that there's this myth, right, that, the airlines got to sidestep the ADA, or, you're saying the FAA, and that certainly is not the case. I don't want anyone to think like the airlines or the FAA as a big government agency got to, sidestep anything or gets to break any of the rules. It's because the ACAA, the Air Carriers Access Act, which is a law, was written by a lot of like PBA and a lot of other great advocacy groups back in, I believe it was 1994. So it was like 4 years before the ADA. So I could be, I'm not very good at my math. But so it was 4 years before the ADA, the Air Carriers Access Act was created. And because there was already a law existing for accessible air travel, when the ADA came out, it wasn't air travel was not rolled into the ADA. Now, the ACA really spurred on the ADA, but what it also did was it was the blueprint, but it also showed a lot of gaps and loopholes. And what it was able to do was build us a stronger ADA. So while the ACA isn't great, and there's still a lot more work that needs to be done for accessible air travel, it really did help the ADA be this really robust bill that has really been able to accomplish a lot for the disability community. So that's sort of like a little bit of history as I understand it, of why that is. And so the AAA, so the Air Carriers Access Amendments Act is on the floor, or has been on the floor, in trying to, update that bill and to incorporate, more robust language to help the disability community during air travel. So it's, we recognize that, we need to get that rewritten and re-looked at, and it's constantly, every year since I have been working with Washington D.C., which is basically 2016, I believe we're always seeing that, rewritten and on the floor. Unfortunately, to this date, it hasn't been approved, but hopefully, we'll see. I don't think it made it into the FAA Reauthorization Act this year, but, there's always, 2024, and, again, reach out to your representative and let them know you believe in this bill and you want it signed.
What is it like working with the working with the government and FAA, and I think you're also working with the European Union, right? And London's
Um,
or Europe's.
Not really. I'm
website.
not working. I
Or
have
not.
tried to work with the UK, and I was actually told by their prime ministers there that I'm not a citizen and I can't help. So I thought that was really interesting.
Mm.
We have a lot, the United States, I think, has been very, very welcoming, even with paying for some flights for people in the UK to come out and speak on the behalf of accessible air travel.
Oh, good.
And, we have not been so as welcomed.
So, what is it like working with Washington D.C. here?
Yeah, they're very responsive. I think it's, if you support what you're asking, they're very receptive. I think if I came in with just an ask and a demand and saying, I want a wheelchair spot, okay, what do you want us to do with that? What we came with was, I came with videos, I came with images, photographs, I came with animations of what a wheelchair spot could look like one day. We came in very, very prepared.
With a
And I think,
solution,
yeah,
right? You came in
exactly.
with it. Yeah.
We came in, exactly. We came in with the solution, and we also said, we did a proof of concept. And I think that's why we've been taken so seriously, is we just didn't come in saying, we want something.
Right.
We
I
said,
think a lot
we want
of
something, and we're spending the money to prove to you we want it.
I think a lot of charities could learn from that experience. Because from your TED talk, I thought that was one of the main highlights is that you lead with the solution. Very important. Very
Oh,
important when
thank you.
working with government services, because as people know, government is very confused and there's always a lot of red tape, and they're focused on all these other things, and sometimes also some selfish things, senators. And so you gotta be like, this is how we solve it. We need X, Y, and Z, and here's how we do it. Okay, we know what to do. Thank you. That's, I think, very wise. Oh yeah, I also wanted to comment, because you said this too, that Disney parks are more accessible than airplanes, which I thought was a great comparison. That
Yeah,
it's going to be a pain in the ass, and maybe you can't even go to Disney World or Disneyland, but there it's actually accessible. That's
exactly. Their buses
yeah,
are accessible. Their rides are accessible. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of their rides are, they have the actually Q-straint tie-down systems on their rides. And
really.
so I just think it's, fascinating that, if you can get to Disney, it's more accessible than your airplane.
I haven't been since I was really, really little, so I didn't even know that. My friend Ryan, who's also 25, I make fun of him all the time. He goes to Disneyland all the time. I'm like, Ryan, what are you, 5? Like, focus on some other thing. He goes all the time. It's
Hey,
insane.
it's a great place.
Yeah, I know. But okay. Let's see here. I know we don't have too much time left, so I'm gonna kind of skip some of these questions real quick. I was gonna ask you, are you still working? You're still in the fashion industry? You're still
Yes,
doing that?
I'm still in the fashion
That's
industry, and I work for JCPenney's corporate, and they also support a wheelchair spot on airplanes. They're always supportive of the
Oh,
work
good.
that I'm doing, and yeah, couldn't ask for a better organization to work for.
I was gonna ask you as well that, like, what are some, just so people get again the impact of what it's like to lose or have a damaged wheelchair. What are some of the worst examples you've seen of having a lost or damaged wheelchair, or someone actually getting injured? And can you
Yeah,
explain what it's like for some people, like your son is paralyzed? Like sometimes they have to assist you in, certain ways. So,
unfortunately, many people might know the story of Ingrassa Figueroa, and her story is, her wheelchair was damaged, and she did not get one back. And so she was originally placed in just a manual, regular wheelchair. And right from then, right away, she developed pressure sores, and she just never, was able to recover from those initial pressure sores. And as we know, I think within 6 months, she had passed away from those injuries. And this is not, unfortunately, this was probably the first one that, caught media's attention and was so public. But we have been told that this is probably not the first death from, similar situation. But also, people have been injured and even incurred death from from their transfers while they're being dropped because they were dropped. And so, in the past, people could say, oh, it's an inconvenience, or, I'm not getting my wheelchair and I can't go to work, or like those are larger inconveniences. But now we're talking about, life or death situations. And, what we hope is, because thank goodness to social media and regular media that, they're putting more focus on this, we're seeing people have a place now to really, let us know what's really happening in real time. And we're starting to really see the story unfold in a new way that we haven't had that opportunity before.
It's sad that it takes that dramatic of an example for things to get moving. And it's been like that for other people getting rights. It's always taken a big tragedy for things to get moving. And sometimes way more than one, which is even worse.
Yeah. And, on the positive side, the disability community is traveling, right? The disability community is traveling more than they ever have in any time in history. And so I think that's really wonderful. But of course, what we're also seeing is, in 2019, it was the number that you were saying, 25 wheelchairs are damaged a day. Unfortunately, that number actually has gone up. And if we looked at the numbers today, I think we're at 39 wheelchairs a day. And so unfortunately, you would think with all of the spotlight on, the lack of accessible air travel, we would hope that those numbers would go down and improve. But unfortunately, it's going up. And so that's why we're here. And hopefully we'll still be here for a little while and, get those numbers to come down, as well as provide a wheelchair spot.
What do people do if like, if I was to fly to Austin, Texas to do comedy at Joe Rogan's new club or something, and they lost or completely damaged my wheelchair, and I'm just sitting in the airport, and I'm like, it's my first time. I have no idea what to do. Do you know the process that I should go through?
Well, first I would tell you, try to be proactive on the packing of your wheelchair. So I would label your wheelchair. I would let the, wheelchair agents and the baggage handlers know everything about your wheelchair. Where do you turn your wheelchair on and off? How much does your wheelchair weigh? Where can they lift your wheelchair so it doesn't separate from the seat from the base? Like lift here signs.
I have to take off for a power chair, right? I have to take off the headrest, and I have to take off the back, and I have to disassemble all that.
I would recommend taking off, if you can take off the parts, like if they're removable, I would take them off and put them into a duffel bag that you can take onto the airplane with you, and you don't get charged for that extra bag, and they can't tell you that you can't bring that onto the airplane with you. If you can lay down your seating system or fold it, I would do that as well. You have a better chance of it getting through the airplane door. I'm a big fan of wrapping your wheelchair, so that green cellophane wrapping thing that they have. Like I always recommend wrapping your wheelchair like that. So and I heard those are because of, if you do that, people who get to the other side of their travel, their wheelchairs are intact. Another one is, if you're fortunate enough to maybe have an older wheelchair hanging out in your garage, don't let that battery die, and travel with your older wheelchair. And because so if it is damaged, you're traveling with something that you might not be so upset about when you get back from vacation or business travel.
Right. So if I showed up and it was destroyed or lost or a different airport or something, do they have wheelchairs to rent like there in the airport, or you have to call a service in that area and
you would have to call a service? And so there's a company, I think it's called Global Repair Groups. I think that's the company that all of the airlines are or most are contracted with. Now, I don't know if they have wheelchairs that they rent. I know that's the organization that's supposed to repair your wheelchair. And, are they going to be able to repair your wheelchair in a day or a couple of days? Or if it's a total repair job, then it would take like, months probably.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, you say your goal is to get your son to his dream destination of Japan, right? And the
Correct.
goal of All Wheels Up is to get all wheelchair users to their dream destination safely and with dignity. Can you explain the importance of the dignity aspect of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, I created this when I was embarrassed as a caregiver. Everybody's watching me come back. I was holding up the plane coming back because I had to take apart a wheelchair. Um, you know, I and I'm an able-bodied person, and I'm walking back on the airplane. I hear terrible stories of, oh, I had to be, carried on the airplane. I just don't see why it has to be that way. You should be able to roll onto the wheelchair and lock yourself in just like you do on a bus, and you have that dignity of being independent. You shouldn't be carried like a baby onto an airplane. And I think I even referenced it maybe in the TEDx if I haven't. Um, President Roosevelt's plane, right? It was modified for his political safety, because I didn't want a ramp to be an indicator that the president might be, flying to that location. But then it was also built that way for his dignity, because you wouldn't want to see the president of the United States carried like a baby. And I think even Winston Churchill had said, you wouldn't expect to see the president, carried like a baby. So I think, I don't think it should, dignity should be left to presidents only. It should be for everybody.
Exactly. I was going to ask you to explain that because you did say that in your TED Talk. And I thought that was
Yeah.
fascinating. I was like, actually, that's pretty awesome. The first, modified airplane was for the president. That's so cool. And most people don't know that still, I think that FDR was disabled.
Mhm.
Because people say, oh, Michael, I used to kind of get into politics sometime and do some political streams. Like, Michael, what are you going to be, the president? And they're like, they're not going to let you be the president as a cripple with all your health problems. I'm like, actually, there already was one. And they're like, what? No way.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, FDR. FDR
And
was the.
I believe that's why they put in the panel in the president's desk so they wouldn't see his wheelchair.
Yes, I heard that. That's true. What would be some tips you would give for someone trying to start a nonprofit?
Oh goodness, I could probably write a book just on that.
You should. You
Yeah.
should. With all the things you've done.
Yeah. Well, first, if you're passionate about it, I don't let anybody tell you no. I mean, even recently, I have been asked by other organizations to shut my organization down. So I think it's just really telling of what those other, say organizations or people's, they just didn't want, to see a wheelchair spot be a success. And so always, if people are telling you no, you have to ask yourself, what is it in it? What is it in it for them, right? Or what isn't in it for them, so to speak, right? So I would definitely always, somebody's telling you no, what's their ulterior motive? Maybe other than they want you to have your time, because I have no free time.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. They would tell you to not do this, not improve the lives of millions of people and your son. It's like, you'd have to be mentally, criminally insane to tell a mother with a disabled child to not better the future for him, let alone millions of people. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess it's, my biggest thing is, don't give up on what you deem as a passion project for yourself, or, for something that you're doing to better the world. And even if you get out there that first time, whether it's your first meeting or your first podcast or whatever, and you think you have fallen on your face, I can assure you, I have probably fallen on my face harder than anyone else out there. And you just have to, do you believe in it enough to improve yourself? And, I was actually asked about this. I was actually in Washington, D.C., my very first trip. I tell you, like, I did not think I would ever be in Washington, D.C. That is not my background. I have a degree in fashion merchandising. I not political at all. And the Muscular Dystrophy Association said, hey, I think you need to get to Washington and start talking. And so I did, and I was in a room of over 100 people, and somebody actually said, he said, this was a horrible presentation. You seem so unprepared. And he's like, if you really want to be a success, he's like, you need to do better. And I was mortified. It was the first time I ever gave a public presentation. I was just like, I could have just packed up then and there and said, this is not for me. And you know what? I went and I took classes on speaking. And, I was like, nope, I'm not going to give up. I want to, get better at this. And now I gave a TEDx, which you saw. And so with the help of Toastmasters and, so yeah, what I have to say is, no matter what you think, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom, like at one point I was, or, I've never been to DC and done government. Anything is possible, anything. So just go do it, have faith in yourself, and fail a lot, because I fail every day. So
same here. And I've found that is a through line of all great people I've talked to who are ambitious and changing the world, that they say, yeah, I just never gave up. And I thought, all right, I'm going to learn from this failure and this experience. And everyone always says, I failed more than anyone around, That's the thing. That's true. And I fail all the time. There's many podcasts, like with my friend Ryan, when I first started doing these, where it would go nowhere. I'm like, I can't put this out there. So we do practice ones and we get into it. And I totally know what that's like. And one last question, right? So I think you said you were even working with Pete Buttigieg, right? From the Department of Transportation. Did I hear you say that?
I'm working with members of his team. Yeah.
Members of his team. All right.
Yeah.
What's that like?
But they're great. They're so supportive of, the work that we're doing. We've met with multiple people from his staff, to the point that he knows about our work. He actually sent a video last year to open up our working group. So we host an annual working group now where we bring together stakeholders from all over the world to discuss a wheelchair spot on airplanes. It's every, plane manufacturer, every major airline here in the United States, and some from overseas, and the wheelchair manufacturers, the wheelchair tie-down manufacturers, anybody that could actually have a say and a voice and really move this forward. The FAA, Canada Transport, everybody is there, and Secretary Pete Buttigieg opened us up last year with a video. So, and then last year and this year, both on the the ADA anniversary, he both again announced his support for a wheelchair spot on airplanes. So, we're just so grateful for his support and his belief in the project.
Okay, well that's great. I know people say he didn't do much for East Palestine, Ohio after the chemical spill. And, so there's a lot of criticisms of him, but I'm glad he's doing something for this at least. That's great. So, one last time, tell everyone how they can support All Wheels Up, and whether it's monetarily or donating time, what resources, whatever.
Absolutely. Check out our website. We do have a donate button. You can contact us for support. We actually walk you through, one-on-one guidance. We call the program Fly Safe Today, and we'll walk you through how to travel. So if you have more questions, just reach out to us on email there, and we'll set up the time and connect with you on how to, travel safely. And we have a run coming up again, so check us out on our social media there. You could, the links are on our social to register, and we'd love for you to come out and support us in August for National Accessible Air Travel Day.
Awesome. And what was the one place you can contact for advice again on helping travel? I might contact you because I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, if you go onto our website, I believe our email is there. It says contact, and it will just
just
into
email you guys. Yeah. Okay, just email you guys. Awesome. All right, and then for me, I got my website, michaelthechairman.com. If you guys want to check that out, I got my stand-up comedy, all my podcasts, and my services. If you want me to produce your podcast or manage it, or give you advice on how to launch it. I got master classes. I got even you want to write comedy with me, I got some services like that. And also, please rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Helps the podcast out a lot. Get recommended more often. And I appreciate everyone watching. And please go check out All Wheels Up. I think it's a very, very important cause. And send this podcast to anyone you know whose life is affected currently, or I mean, not affected too, because like we said earlier, it could be affected by having a disability or eventually being disabled. So thanks again, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Michelle, for joining me. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.